Hello?
Hello. Hi, it's Hassan.
Assalamu alaikum, it's me. Uh,
Hi. Is this, can I call you John or do you want me to call you Skeptic?
you can call me skeptic. I mean, I'm an ex-Muslim myself, so I don't really put my name out there. But
Okay, not a
yeah,
problem. Okay. You can keep your
no
camera off
problem,
if
man.
you want.
Yeah, it's not that I don't. It's just I'd rather just keep it off for now.
That's perfectly okay. Uh, so, uh,
Sorry for joining a bit late. I'll just be occupied with something. But
no,
yeah, I'm
that's
here for.
fine. It's perfectly on time now. So,
Yeah,
is everything okay your side, audio
yeah, I can see
wise?
everything perfectly fine. Yeah,
Good, okay. Right, so, what would you like to ask? What would you like to talk
I just
about?
wanted to. Yeah, I just wanted to say that. You know what? I was on Hamza's Den like last week, and he had a video series called something like debating atheists about the contingency argument or something.
Hmm.
So then I saw you like talking to Mohammed Jawa. I just thought that you were very reasonable. So I went over to your channel, right? And I think that you had some really good content on evolutions. I just wanted to speak to you about that if that's okay with you.
Please go ahead. Thank you for the comment.
Yeah, no problem. So I just want to say that first I'm grateful for you taking this call. I appreciate you giving me time, honestly.
Not a problem.
You're an ex-Muslim yourself, right?
Yes, yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If I could
okay.
ask you, sorry.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, if I could just briefly ask you, like, what was your like, just in like a nutshell, what was your like way out? I guess.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, from right from the beginning, I had my doubts. Even like as a
Uh-huh.
small child, I didn't like the thought that what was going on was, from what my mum was telling me about the religion, that it was some sort of game where we had to behave, and then you had to, well, behave in a certain way. Then you got rewarded if you did it, or punished if you didn't. And
Yeah.
I felt unhappy at times because it was like I didn't really have a choice whether I wanted to take part or not, because like we were created for that purpose,
Oh yeah.
and it was that was didn't sit right at first as a small child, and then as I got older, became a teenager, I thought about it and I learned more about other religions, and then it dawned on me that I was only a Muslim because that's what I was born into, and was
Right.
Shia, and I was only Shia because my parents were Shia. So I realised if I had been born into any other religion, I would have followed that religion. So then I thought, well, why should I accept Islam to be true when I'm only following it because I was born into it? And then once I thought a bit more about it and all the other issues such as evolution, the problem of evil, then I realised that it wasn't a solution to any problems that I have or the world has.
Right. Yeah, no, that's pretty good. Thanks. I appreciate you clearing that up.
Mm.
So yeah, I just wanted to call you because it seems your channel is focused mainly on evolution, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
I'm active on Discord, but on Discord, they don't really talk about evolution too much. So I wanted to talk to you about it because I've done like a good amount of research, not a good amount of research, but I've looked into evolution a fair bit, and it seems you know what you're talking about. So I was wondering if I could just ask you about that a bit.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
Yeah,
I was
sure.
just say I come on to that because I like to focus on evolution because one thing that frustrates me is science miscommunication is when people like Sabor, because you might probably notice I focus a lot on Sabor,
Mm,
but a large part of that is because he does a lot of science miseducation on his channel,
right.
and that's what I really want to. That's what frustrates me also. That's why I tend to go after him more. Whereas Hamza spends most of his time arguing with Christians, and Muhammad Hijab comes up with strange philosophical arguments, which none of which
Yeah.
make sense anyway. And Ali Dar is just weird, so you can't really have any sort of
Yeah.
discussion with him. Um, so yeah, that's what I think. So I think I liked, and also because I didn't want to delve into the religious stuff too much, because I want people to focus on the science, and I want them to see that I'm doing it for the science and focus on that.
Right. Okay, that's perfect. So yeah, I just want to talk to you about that as well, right? Because so like right now I'm totally in the closet, right? Nobody knows that I'm an ex-Muslim, so like
Mm,
it's just me. I'm like 19, living at home, so it's kind of risky, right? Oh, so by the way, if I do like stop talking or anything, that's why. Somebody might go in the room or something.
sure.
But yeah. So like whenever I talk about evolution in my community, Subur's name always gets mentioned. Like, have you seen Subur Ahmed's work on this? And it's really frustrating because he's not actually spoken about ERVs. He's not spoken about pseudogenes, and he's not spoken about the fossil record, which is my three like main evidences for evolution. So it's really frustrating. That's why I wanted to speak to you about
Yeah. From what I've known about him, and from what I have seen, he's not spoken about ERVs
that. No, it's
because
not.
he doesn't have an answer to that. Um, he's done these talks with Skydive Field. Have you watched them?
Oh no, I'm not. Skydive Field? No, I've not
Yeah,
seen it.
yeah. Look those up. Sabur Ahmed and Skydive Field. They had a 2 hour long discussion in Speaker's Corner a few years ago, and Skydive Field brought up the pseudogenes a lot, and Sabur didn't really have any answer to that. All he did was just keep on repeating assumption of homology, assumption of homology. His
Jesus.
whole argument was basically that because two things look similar, you can't say that they have the same descendant,
Hmm.
which in a way is true. But there was so much supporting evidence for evolution that we don't group two organisms together just because they look similar. There's
Yeah,
a
precisely.
whole range of characteristics that they have. There is that fossil record. There is the genetics and their distribution according, in where they are in the world. That's a big step. And he has
Yeah.
spoken about the fossil record, but nearly all that he says about the fossil record is the mistruths about the Cambrian explosion, which I have mentioned in my video. And also, he talks about that fossilization is a rare event, which is
Hmm.
true, but there's a lot of information that can be gleaned from the fossil record that we have.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. So God, I don't know where to start from that. So yeah, so I was thinking about that thing as well. So he keeps talking about how the fossil record has like a limited number of fossils, right?
Yeah,
But one fossil we know there was at least like a large population which accompanied that fossil just because of parsimony, right?
exactly.
So
Yeah,
I don't like that point that he gives. It's really frustrating because even with a few fossils, we can get a pretty good picture of at least the selective pressure that was applied historically,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
we can date the fossils accurately. Yeah.
He
So
so he
go on.
says he says something about how most species aren't fossilized,
Yeah.
and in a way that's true. But then when you look at the evidence that we do have, 100% of the evidence that we do have points to evolution, and none of it points to anything else. So saying
Yeah.
that only a tiny percent is fossilized doesn't really make any inroads to any other argument.
Yeah. Precisely.
Yeah.
So I'm more of a philosophical guy, right? Like I didn't really start with this evolution stuff. I started with like hardcore philosophy, contingentarianism, necessitarianism. So by the way, if you want to talk to me about philosophy like anytime, I'm down for that. Because I know about all these arguments. Like I don't know, like I'm more comfortable with philosophy than I am with evolution.
Yeah.
So I think of it from that stance, right? So like I like to start talking about epistemology and how we reach conclusions about the world, and then we can just say that the most likely explanation, given the data that we do have, given the epistemological like constraints that we have, I like to say that, and then but it's really difficult because I can only talk with creationists because ex-Muslims don't only talk about evolution. So I just thought I'd give you a call.
Yeah, yeah, that's
So
fine. I mean, I've picked up a bit about the philosophy. I think you have to in this
you
sphere,
have to,
don't you?
yeah,
Yeah,
you have to.
yeah,
But if you
yeah.
ever do want to talk about that, I mean, I've got a lot of like I'm 19, but I know a fair bit about philosophy. So if you ever do want to talk about that,
Sure.
like how we reach conclusions.
Thank you. Yeah, you could just reply the email, and we can I can have a look.
Yeah, precisely. So honestly, yeah, if you do have anything about philosophy, I can like let you know. I was gonna ask you. So Darwinism refers to the three mechanisms of natural selection, sexual selection, and mutations, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah. Typically, Darwinism involves the mechanisms that were known to Darwin.
Yeah.
So typically, that is natural selection acting on random mutations. But
And
so
sexual selection.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's that one and sexual selection. He only really knew about those two. There were all kinds of other ones that we've discovered since.
Yeah.
So they're called non-Darwinian things like genetic drift is one way,
Yeah.
and all of this has been put together in what's called the modern synthesis.
Yeah,
So
precisely. So I was
that's
going to ask you about that. So that's called neo-Darwinism, the modern synthesis, which includes genetic recombination, genetic drift, and genetic gene flow.
yes. It's all,
Is there anything I've missed from that, or is that cool? Or
no, that's about right. Yes.
yeah, that's about right. Okay, and then there are other mechanisms that are being proposed, like epigenetic changes and niche construction and stuff.
There are
What
some.
do you
Yeah,
say
yeah. There are
that
some
we say
people.
they don't enjoy as much experimental support, so we don't incorporate them into like our working mechanisms? Is that accurate?
yes, in a way that is accurate. There isn't that much evidence for them. There is some, and there are people who work in them. And
Yeah.
the discussion at the moment, which I picked up about, is that these people are they're thinking of these as extra mechanisms to the neo Darwinian modern synthesis.
Okay.
None of them are saying that this replaces Darwinism or neo Darwinism and that neo Darwinism is wrong. That's the impression you'd get from watching Sabor, that there's all these scientists are
Yeah.
giving conflicting ideas. They're all in disagreement. That's what he's trying to think, but they're not, because in every scientific specialty, there's always areas that people are discussing, usually on the periphery, and people talk about the relative importance of each part, and that's what's happening here.
Yeah, precisely. Okay, cool. That's fine then. I was going to ask you about also experimental evidence for evolution. So we can see evolution happening in the lab, right? So I've got Lenski's long-term E. coli experiment. I'm sure you're familiar with that,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
I've got variation and domestication. Is there any other notable experiments in the lab of evolution happening, like we can point to show these mechanisms can like have a creative power?
Yes, the Lenski is the most common one that people know about, but there are other experiments and other findings as well. One thing I tend to mention is the the bacteria that have uh, that have an enzyme called nylonase, which has evolved to break down nylon. And
Oh,
nylon has only been around since the 1930s, so these bacteria couldn't have had them from before then. And this enzyme is new, so it came through a mutation. And anyone who looks that up, nylonase, then they'll see that this is new. And other experiments, the other famous one is the Italian wall lizard, and this is one where they put these lizards in a Croatian island, and they had evolved within a human lifetime into a new species.
oh, new speciation occurred.
Yes,
In,
new speciation occurred. Yes, so that's the Italian wall lizard. That's the one I tend to use a lot. And
oh,
another one, I think it's the marbled crayfish, is one as well. That's a new species that has come about,
oh, okay.
and
So,
that's
like, what is this the biological species definition we're operating under? I'm guessing.
yes, yeah, yeah. Yes, if you look,
Okay,
yeah, people can look it up, and that's in animals. In plants, there are new species that come about probably more frequently. A lot of that's coming about from duplication of chromosomes. So they vary in their chromosomes a lot more than animals would, and
I see.
and so you tend to come up with new species that way.
So how did this? Okay, so can I ask you about this? Actually, the Sicilian wall lizard about that.
Italian wall lizard, yeah.
Sorry, Italian wall lizard. Let me get this down properly. How did this Italian wall lizard speciate so quickly? Was there some strong selective pressure on it?
Yes, there was. It was food, how it hunted, and so its diet, its environment. It was just vastly different to where it had been before, and so it had changed quite quickly.
I see. Okay, I'm gonna look into this. Thanks
Mm.
for the.
Yeah, look it up.
Would you say there's any other notable ones? Because I never thought speciation was occurred in the lab.
Yeah, it has. It certainly has occurred in the lab. Of course, mentioned Lenski, the famous citrate. How bacteria evolved to aerobically digest citrate. So
Mhm.
that's quite a common one. In terms of the next thing we're going to say was anything else I could think of. There are others. There's the silver fox experiment where where foxes were bred to promote characteristics that were more friendly towards humans, and so they all became tamer and more meek, and that changed their behaviour down generations, and also changed their appearance as well. They became a lot more fluffier, looked more like pet dogs rather than wild wolves.
I
But
see. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah, I was also gonna mention. So all dogs and like plants have all been selective pressure, like artificial pressure. So that's also a pretty good example I've got of that one.
yeah.
So yeah,
That's a,
thank you for
that's
that.
that's a good one. Yes, you could talk about how a lot of the plants that we see, a A lot of them came
Yeah.
from wild mustard that had been bred by humans, artificial selection, and also all the dog
Yeah.
breeds by
But
artificial
this is what
selection.
prior to the agricultural revolution. So this is like maybe like 10,000 years. We're talking 15,000 years.
Yeah,
We've got
it's about that time.
massive
Since
gains
since
in
most
like,
probably sooner than that, since farming was around. Yeah.
yeah. So okay, that's really cool. I also wanted to ask you: have you heard of this creationist talking point where they talk about waiting for two mutations?
Yes, the waiting time problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So they talk about this. They give this study. I can pull it up for you if you want. I'm sure you're familiar with it. They
I
talk
think
about
I
this
am. I
study
think I'm
where
aware of that. It was on one of the papers. They published it, and this was this was something where somebody had. It was a. I'm just trying to look it up now. Yes, that's right. It was a editor who was leaving or something, and he arranged for a creationist paper, and it was about the waiting time problem, and it got published. But the waiting time problem is not really a problem because you don't need to wait for one mutation to come and then another one. Some can happen simultaneously, so you could get two neutral mutations that don't do anything, and
Mhm.
then you could have a third that activates all three mutations. So it's
Sure.
not, yeah, so it's not really an issue, and it's been the waiting time problem has been debunked.
Mhm. Are you aware of the familiar study that I'm citing, or is it just is there loads that they just talk about? I thought it's just this same one because I've seen it brought up everywhere. I've seen it brought up on this
Do you mean
server.
this
It's
waiting
it's
time
called
problem?
waiting for two mutations actually.
Yeah, that's the one I know. Yes, that's the only one I'm aware of. I'll just look it up.
Um,
Yeah, the waiting time problem. That's the
I've got
one.
it
Yeah.
here. Waiting for two mutations with applications to regulatory sequence evolution and the limits of the. What was this study trying to sell to prove? I was trying to read it, but it's super dense. I can't even.
Yes. Yeah. So here we are. Yeah. Yeah. This is. I've got a information here from Panda's Thumb, which I think is what's his name now? This is the PZ Myers page. So he's
Okay.
done. He's written it on the waiting time problem, and also in terms of anti-creationism evolution pages. One thing I'd quite recommend is the channel Professor Dave Explains. He
Yes. Yeah.
yes,
I've seen
have you
this.
watched? Yeah, he's done four good ones on the his his one focusing on Stephen Meyer was quite good at debunking
Yeah.
this supposed waiting time problem.
Oh yeah. I think it was Michael Behe because Michael Behe would give the mathematical argument, or maybe it was. I thought Maya's debunk was about the
Yeah,
Cambrian
I think
explosion.
it was Myers. I think it was Myers
Yeah.
from what I
I've seen
remember
his.
top of my
That's a
head. But
great. That's
yeah,
a
the
beautiful
Behe
series.
one is good. Another
Yeah.
one that I tend to look at, especially when it comes to primates and human chimp common ancestry, is Gutsit Gibbon. She's called Erica.
Oh
She's
yeah.
a primatologist, but she's very good at debunking creationism and going through all the genetics. A lot of her stuff is above my head, and I have to really concentrate to understand that.
Jeez. Yeah. But yeah. I've seen her content. It's really cool because she explains it super simply and like she can keep her cool under like high
She's
pressure situations. She had a
yeah,
debate with Ken Hovind, and
yeah,
like it's just really well done.
yeah. She's got a great channel, and
Yeah. Okay. That's super cool. Okay.
yeah, and
Could you
then
send me that?
sorry to anyone who's watching. Sorry, Forrest Valkai as well. He's another a good one. So you feel to look him up.
Yeah. He's great.
Mm.
Okay. Sweet. Okay. I was gonna ask you about the common designer argument they constantly throw out. How do you respond to that one personally?
Yes, this is the one where they say, well, of course it's going to be similar because they have the same designer. Yeah, there's a channel that I've used a lot, I reference a lot, called Creation Myths, and
Mhm.
that's by an evolutionary biologist called Dr. Dan Stern Cardinal, and he has these. I mean, it looks very basic PowerPoint presentations. There's not flashy or anything, but he's got lots of really good information in it. And in this one, he looked at this he showed how genes that are expressed that where you actually see people, we actually see similarities. They pass down, say through evolution, but also the ones that aren't expressed um, don't show any pattern, which is what you would expect if it was passed down through evolution and not through a common designer. I'm not sure if I
I see.
explained it that well, but on his channel, he's debunked it, and his one was called this one was called common designer or something. Actually, I might just try and look that up, and because I don't want to be wrong here.
No problem.
Um,
In fact, I've got it right here. I've got it right here. I'll put it in the chat actually.
creation.
1 sec. Did you say, by the way? I just want to ask you. I'm not really too bothered about it. Did you say that there's other people watching?
No, yeah, sorry. I'd say that no one's watching this.
Oh,
I'm recording on my computer just in case there's any problems, but I won't publish it or anything unless you want
oh,
to.
that's all good. I mean, you're done. You're cool to publish it if you want to. I'm not really too bothered.
Oh, okay then. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I might publish that then. Yeah, it's
But
just case creation myth, common design, and that's his. That was the video.
yeah, I've got it right here. It's right in front of me. All right, sweet. I'll give this video a watch as well. Thank you for the info, my friend. I was gonna ask you about abiogenesis. Have you done any? Have you looked into that at all? Have you?
Yes, I have looked into that. I've read about this all started way back. I think it's the Miller-Urey experiments.
Mhm.
Those are the ones where it showed how if you have some basic chemicals, basic organic chemicals, which can be created through, say, simple natural mechanisms, and you put them in the right conditions, such as the electricity and the heat, then they start forming amino acids. And this is a famous experiment, but there's lots of work that's been built up upon that. And also, there's something called panspermia, where it's been shown through meteorites that amino acids have come through on asteroids. And there's a famous one that landed in Australia called the Murchison meteorite, and that had lots of um, organic chemicals on, like amino acids. And it's been postulated that these amino acids, they've been formed into space in the right environment and then landed on Earth, and from there life evolved.
Right. Okay.
That's one thing, and that's another thing that Professor Dave Explains did. He's having like a long running battle with James Tour.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah,
I've seen that.
so he's been in
Jeez.
lots of abiogenesis stuff. So some of that's a bit heavy going, but
Mm.
it's easy to get the grasp of it.
Right. Yeah, because I did some research into this before. I've looked into like the RNA world hypothesis. There's this channel called Stated Clearly. I don't know if you.
Oh yeah, like John Perry stated clearly, that's a very good channel. Yeah,
He's got some really good content on like the Miller-Urey experiment,
yeah,
RNA world hypothesis, metabolism. I looked into all this
yeah.
stuff.
That's a good one. I like the way um, it's all explained really well, and you've got
Yeah.
the graphics. That's a really informative channel.
Yeah, I really do like that. I appreciate that information. If I was to ask you to make the case for common ancestry, like as strong as you could, what would you give me for human chimp ancestry? Human
For
chimp
human
ancestry.
chimp common ancestry,
Mhm.
there's the evolution fossil record. So you have the change in the size of the brain as it goes from our common ancestor to how we are now. That's one line of evidence. There's the pseudogene, where you see the same genes that are broken in humans and chimpanzees. There's this similarity in the DNA and the genetics, but in all of that, probably what I find the most compelling is the endogenous retrovirus argument.
Yeah.
That one was put forward in one of Stated Clearly's videos, and it showed where the endogenous retroviruses have been inserted into the human and the chimp genome, and he calculated the odds that the endogenous retroviruses could have got where they were purely by chance, and the number was completely, astronomically next to impossible. And the only way that they could have got there was through a common ancestor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Precisely.
So
Okay.
I say
Cool.
what I tend to give is there's always people who tend to argue saying, "Oh, it's just a possibility," something like that. But I give them the court analogy where someone is convicted when on beyond reasonable doubt. So you have to say, well, when you look at all the evidence, the chances of it being anything different is completely astronomically almost impossible. That you just you'd look like a fool for arguing against evolution and common ancestry.
Yeah, sweet. Okay, that's really good. I was gonna ask you as well. How did you get onto all of these shows? How did you get onto Hamza's Den? How did you get into Subur Ahmed and stuff?
Yeah. At first, I started looking at the Atheist Experience. I like the way they discussed science and philosophy and all of this, and they like theists to call in so they can have a proper discussion. And I looked around thinking, I'd like to have these kind of science discussions and maybe philosophical ones as well. Then I looked at the YouTube pages, and I
So
first
I think you just got out there for a second.
oh, sorry, okay. I'm
Yeah, no
saying I
problem.
looked at the YouTube pages of Sabor, was one of them, and also the other one was Imran Hussain. He has a channel
Yes,
called
yes, yes, yes.
Epistemics,
Yeah.
and I started to write comments. They weren't offensive or anything. I was just put my point of view, and people would argue. Then eventually, I'd get blocked from putting comments on, and then I thought, well, I want to just take it up a bit further. And I called. This is about nearly 3 years ago. There was one that I think it might be the one you watched, the one with Mohammed Hijab,
Yeah.
Imran, and Hamza, and we had like an hour-long discussion on. It was on the contingency, philosophical, all that kind of stuff. I just carried on from there, and I tended to focus on the science ones, and I've carried on. Now I've been banned from Hamza's Den. So
Oh, was
yeah,
that after the Subur Ahmed debate?
there was that one, but I've been banned. I think it was much more recently because
Oh,
where
Jesus.
he puts the link out the StreamYard, and when I click on it, it tells me I'm banned.
Okay. Jeez. It was that Subur Ahmed one that got you banned, the panspermia one, right? I'm guessing.
No, it's much more recent. The Sabor Ahmed one was at the end of 2021,
Oh,
and
okay. Sorry,
yeah,
my database stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
sorry,
I've
my
called
bad.
I called a few times, and I last called about 4 or so months ago, and I was in, and I got kicked out because I was arguing with Hamza about science. He doesn't know any science at all, and I made a video on him where he's having a like a mental breakdown because
Oh, jeez.
someone was talking to him about science, and he's there with his book from Stephen Meyer, Return of the God Hypothesis, which is like his favorite book now. I put it in a video debunking him, and I think I got banned after that.
Oh God. Okay. Wait 1 second. No, I'm good. Sorry, I thought someone was coming in, but
That's all.
I'm okay. It's a bit difficult when you're in the closet, right? You gotta you gotta make sure no one's
Yeah.
outside the room. Yeah, I was gonna ask you about your debate tactics. Actually, I was gonna ask you, why did you? I don't mean to offend you in any way. Why did you get so agitated with the recent debates?
I think over time I've learned their tactics,
Uh huh.
and I learn what they're doing, and in a way, although some of them aren't that smart, they can sense where an argument is going, and they cut it off before it gets to that level. So they try and do that, and they refuse to answer questions, and they have this contact of just throwing out question after question at the person they're talking to, but it doesn't. Their answers don't really impact anything, and they're just trying to kill time. They can throw this person off, and then they can talk amongst themselves and make it look like they've won. That's something they do. So, I answer the question, but I really press them to give me an answer as well. I ask them questions, and I say, I say things like, you should be able to answer this if you understand what you're talking about, and that puts pressure on them to answer because otherwise they'll just evade all the time, and it's much better because you're likely to have a shorter conversation, but get more out of it than just a long-winded one that isn't much use to anybody.
Okay, I see. Yeah,
Mm.
I was gonna ask you, like, could I get on their show, or would that be?
Of course, yeah. If they haven't banned you, you could easily just go on, just click on the link, see what and then my advice would be to make sure they answer your questions.
Okay.
and
Yes.
don't let them steamroller you.
I was just curious because I was tempted to go on, but I'm not too sure about like the logistics of it. It's on StreamYard, right?
Their ones are on StreamYard. Yeah, yeah. If you when they're doing their streams, you can just click on it,
Okay, sweet.
and you get put in the backstage, and then they'll put you on it, if they want. Because where were you on last week or the other week?
I've never been on before. I've
Oh,
never
you
been
know,
on
not
before.
sorry. I thought you were on.
No, no, no.
Okay,
I'm tempted to go on though. I'm not sure though.
please do.
It
Yeah,
would depend. Who does he normally have on? Is it just him?
Hamza normally has him and a few other what he calls gladiators. So there's
Gee.
people like Sabor. Sometimes he has Sheikh Uthman calls in from the USA. There's a few others, say Yemeni, sometimes Mohammed Hijab, sometimes Ijaz. They all have their own
Yeah.
little areas of expertise that he tends to try and put together. So there's that, but
Hmm.
there's also EF Dawah as well. And if you want to try somewhere that's less combative, then Imran, Dr. Imran, they call him, and also Abbas. They're two really nice guys. Actually, I have to admit they do come across as really nice people, and you can have a discussion with them, and they don't tend to be as abrasive as Hamza is.
Okay, I see. That's interesting.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I'll bear that in mind. I'll bear that in mind.
Sure, yeah, I look
Um,
forward to seeing you on.
if I'm just kind of because my voice is distinctive, kind of. So because I've spoken to those guys before, like the Lighthouse, the Sapiens guys,
Mm.
but it wasn't live or anything. It was just like a private kind of call. Like we've had a few, like we had a lengthy email exchange. So I'm just kind of thinking because they might recognize my voice.
Yeah, they may
But
do.
yeah,
I wouldn't worry. I mean, I've been on. They've got my picture. I've been to Speaker's Corner as well, so I've seen them all there.
you're from the UK, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
public about your apostasy.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got. I mean, I've got nothing to hide. I've got no personal problems with anybody. Uh, my problem is the science denial. That's the main thing.
I see. Okay, because
That's the main thing.
if you don't asking whereabouts are you located?
I'd just say middle in the Midlands.
Okay, because I live more like around Manchester, so it's like it's pretty Islamic here where you are, so it's a bit different for me. I'm not sure.
Mm. Yeah.
So how did your family react, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. They were disappointed at first, but I just it's the fact that you can't make yourself believe something. You see what I mean? You
Yeah,
probably you must know as well.
yeah,
If you can't if you don't believe something, you can't make yourself believe. You can think about it, uh, but if it's not there and you're not convinced, then you just have to be honest with yourself and just admit that you don't believe it. And so
yeah,
I had to stick to my principles. And the more I've learned, the more I've realised that I can't. I find a lot of it immoral. Some of the laws, some of the rules that go back to that time, the 7th century, and they talk about that, and they try and justify it, and I'm like, that's immoral at any time. Keeping slaves and all of this.
oh yeah, oh it's terrible.
Yeah,
The child marriage stuff especially,
all of that.
Jesus.
Yes, I mean they justify all kinds of bizarre stuff that an irrational person would immediately say is wrong, but they're forced to in a way because they have this like set of behaviors that they have to accept and they have to justify it.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, no, totally understand.
Mm.
Do you want to ask me anything about philosophy or theology or moral philosophy or ontology or anything like that? Is there
Yes,
anything that you
I'd like to know. What would you know, tell me about the stuff that you know best, or what advice would you give to me? Because I'm not an expert on philosophy, so
Yeah,
if
so
we
I
have these
think
discussions.
I would recommend that you look into epistemology like a little bit, because if you're going to be debating these guys and they're all philosophical, it
Mm.
would be helpful for you to understand maybe just a bit, like get into the philosophy. You gotta dabble into it nowadays if you
Yeah.
wanna. Yeah, because I think that you honestly you do know what you're talking about. You're just, um, you're relatively well spoken,
Thank you.
and I do hope that you can maybe try and get through to these guys hopefully, because it's like I said, like Subur Ahmed's name, his name always gets mentioned, and it's just terrible because like he doesn't address any of the main arguments that I have for human chimp ancestry.
He
So
doesn't know. That's what I think. You find 90% of my videos are based on it because there's so much science denial and misinformation that he has on his
yeah,
topic on his videos. So I do a lot, and I think I'm going to try. I'm going to go to Speakers Corners more,
oh yeah,
and I'm going to try and do my own videos there. I'm going to try and film them, try and talk to them, and try and film it. I'm going to try and press them because then they can't kick me out on a stream with if we're in Speakers
jeez.
Corner as well. And I think that would be much more exciting for people who are watching.
Yeah, maybe. So yeah, I would recommend that you do look into philosophy a bit. Maybe even look at like the contingency and cosmological arguments a bit if you want to.
Yeah, I will
If you want to
do.
get into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I will do.
But it does get pretty dry sometimes. So it would depend on how far you want to get into it. But like
Yeah,
I said, I mean, I kind of, if you ever want to talk to me, ask me about it, I'm down to tell you if anything.
yeah. Thank you. That'd be nice.
Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna say something else. Yeah, so yeah, epistemology. You need to look into like so basically what you. I feel like I'm talking to like my teacher and like telling him
No,
what to do.
no, please educate me.
Um,
I don't know that. I'm not much. I mean, what I've learned a lot of it is from the Atheist Experience, where it's American. So they have Christians,
yeah,
fundamentalist
I've
Christians,
seen,
tend to
yeah,
call
yeah,
in, and they
yeah.
give their contingency arguments and all of this, which of course goes back to their own beliefs. But it's the same arguments that can be tweaked for any set of beliefs, any religion.
Yeah, precisely. So I would recommend that you do get into that if you want to. But
Thank you.
epistemology, basically, all it is the study of knowledge, like how we arrive at conclusions. So if you have like a little framework, like I can share my mind briefly, like in 30 seconds with you if you
Yes,
want.
please. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So there's claims about the external world. There's claims about there's logical claims which follow necessarily, like 1 + 1 = 2, uh, red red paint isn't blue, stuff like that, which follows necessarily. And there's like inductive claims, which you have to use a scientific method to arrive at these claims. And with respect to inductive claims, there are many criteria we use to like determine whether or not something is the case. So one of them would be parsimony, which is basically how much the thing. Sorry, I'm gonna explain this really badly. You know Occam's razor, right? I'm sure you've
Yes,
heard of
yeah,
Occam's
because
razor. Yeah,
yeah,
that's all. That's parsimony,
it's
basically.
just basically parsimony. Make it as simplest
Yeah,
one's most likely case. Yeah,
precisely, because there's less to explain, and then
yeah,
like
it's more
extraordinary
likely
claims
to have
require
happened.
extraordinary
Yeah.
evidence. Yeah, precisely.
Mm.
And then an explanatory scope, so like the extent to which the explanation explains phenomena, and then falsifiability. So yeah, I mean, if you just like kind of get into that, because Subur Ahmed and these guys, like they'll dance around the philosophy for days. So
Yeah, yeah,
it would help to
yeah. Sure, I'll make sure I'm up to speed
yeah,
on
no
all that.
problem. Jeez, no problem. Okay, then I look forward to seeing you in Speakers Corner if you if you're
Yeah,
ever gonna go down.
good. I'll put up the videos.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate the conversation. Honestly,
Thank
really
you.
beneficial.
Thank
Help
you. It's
you. I
nice
appreciate
talking to
your
you.
time.
Should maybe
Yeah,
talk
no problem.
again sometime.
Yeah, definitely, man. Honestly, hit me up if you need to talk about anything, and I will maybe
The details. Yeah,
I may
that'd
email
be
you as well.
nice.
Yeah, I hope you benefit from this conversation. I definitely benefit. I'm gonna look
Thank
into
you.
that
I
stuff
have.
that you have with me. Yeah, no
Okay.
problem.
Well, take
I'm
care then.
gonna head off now. Thank you very much for the conversation.
Thank you. Okay. See you.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Bye
bye.
bye.